Thank you so much for joining our session today about brand building. My name is Jeff Nickerson, and I lead the brand experience and excellence team at Amazon. And our mission is to help sellers build incredible brands that customers are going to absolutely love. And today you are going to hear from some amazing experts about how they were able to make that happen. So hopefully you learn something that you'll be able to take away to make your brand stronger and resonate more with customers. So today we're going to talk about how you can build a great brand, how you can stay connected with your shoppers, and how you can build long-term customer relationships. So I'm going to have some questions for the panelists, but at the end, we would love to take your questions as well from the audience. So please use the QR code in the app to submit your questions, and we would love to take those with the panelists. And now, let's meet the panelists. Hi, I'm Jeff Nickerson, a senior manager at Amazon, and I lead the brand experience team. We work towards a singular vision to make the Amazon store a great place to build a brand that customers love. So how do we achieve this? By creating products that help your brand stand out with a unique value proposition and increase the customer lifetime value of the customer base you've worked so hard to build. I live in Seattle, and I've been innovating products to help selling partners succeed on Amazon for the past 9 years. I'm really excited to moderate this panel. With the partners that we're bringing in, they can share an incredible wealth of knowledge and experience between them. And now it is my absolute pleasure to introduce them to you.
Hi, I'm Robert Strong, co-founder, CEO, and head saucier of Pretty Thai. It's difficult to create a unique, fun, quality dinner experience for your family. Well, Pretty Thai is a chef-crafted line of specialty sauces and spices focused on giving you exactly that. We give you a restaurant-quality experience in the comfort of your kitchen. Pretty Thai has been selling on Amazon for the last 2 years, and we've seen some tremendous growth. And we are really excited to be here today to share with you at Accelerate.
Hi, I'm Abigail Wald, and I am the founder of the Yes Bar Company. And I did not set out to build a business. I set out to actually solve a real-world problem in my own home. My son had a limited diet of things that he could eat and couldn't eat, and I didn't want him to have a limited life. So my goal was to create a snack that would taste absolutely delicious while still maintaining our values and the diet limitations that we had. And so when it came time to actually build a business, one of the things that we realized is that Amazon is an incredible way for us to actually communicate directly with our customers, to be able to tell our story with that A+ content, and to be able to actually let them know who we are and to meet them and care about their values as well. So thank you, Amazon. I'm so glad to be here to share our story.
Hi, my name is Daniela Bolzman. I'm the founder of Mindful Goods. We are a female-founded creative agency that's helped over 500 brands to elevate their content on Amazon. And because we get to see some of the biggest brands in the world and even some of the tiniest brands in the world elevate their content on Amazon, I'm so excited to bring you this panel where we can share the stories of exactly how they're doing it behind the scenes so that you too can learn how you can elevate the content for your brand and see the extraordinary results that they're seeing.
Well, please welcome our panelists. Well, I'm so excited to learn from all of you. There's some incredible stories of building brands here today. Abigail, I would love to start off with you. So how did you build Yes Bar into the successful brand that it is today?
Okay. I started off, so first of all, I should say I didn't intend to start a business. I actually was just solving a real world problem that we had in our home. And I just wound up solving a problem with a solution that lots of people liked. And so then it became a business. So that was really how we started. And the reason that I started is because my son had all these food limitations. And I found it really sad. He'd come home from school and he'd be crying because everybody else had cupcakes. And I was like, I can't help. You know, nobody wants to see their kid cry every day after school. And so I walked in the kitchen one day and I just made all the stuff I could say yes to. And that became the Yes Bar. And that commitment to, I didn't want him to live a life of restriction. I wanted him to feel abundant. And that commitment to abundance and food freedom became the cornerstone of our brand. Really, we wanted to share that with the world. And so ultimately that led to where we are today. First, it started with little paper bag transfers at preschool. And now we're in over 1,500 stores. We're on JetBlue. We're in Google headquarters. We are number 10 nut bar on Amazon. We have been as high as number 2 at times. And, Amazon for us is not additional, it's foundational. It really is how we've chosen to build our business. And I think one of the things actually that I love so much about Amazon is, if you go into a grocery store, you're like fighting with everybody on the shelf. But with Amazon, that shelf opens up into a giant room that just immerses our customer. And that's with the A+ content. And that A+ content, it allows people to really taste our bars, and it allows them to feel our values. And then the reviews build trust, and then the DMs build relationship. And the brand analytics make it a two-way conversation, so that even affects our choices as a brand. And then I think from a service and price standpoint, honestly, there's no better way to scale and find customers. Like, the costs have been absolutely so much better than elsewhere. And so basically, we find our customers who share our values and our taste, and we find them because of you guys, because of Amazon. So that's how we've built our brand.
What an incredible story. And I have to say, it helps so much to have, this differentiated product and to lead with an incredible mission, and then how you've been able to translate that into, the scale and really changing, your customers' lives. It's an incredible and inspiring story. Well, Robert, would love to turn to you. What was the secret sauce behind Pretty Thai, if you don't mind the silly pun?
Not at all. Pretty Thai, we're actually pretty punny, so that's what started the whole thing. We started off as Pretty Thai for a White Guy food truck 11 years ago in Austin, Texas. My wife and I met in culinary school, had the idea for this food truck. I fell in love with Thai food when I went on my second deployment to Fallujah and took a trip to Thailand. So I came back and went to culinary school. And it was during that time that people started asking us for the sauces we were making the dishes with. So I started looking in all the retail locations, and nobody was doing it with the quality, with the flavor, and with the versatility that we were doing it from a truly chef approach. So it started as the secret, but it really changed. The secret sauce became the persistence that it took to be here right now. And we were really tested very early on with the loss of our first child, Palmer. And, we spent 47 days battling for his life in Texas Children's Hospital in Houston. And I had to make a decision. Do I go back to my life working with the military, or do I double down? Do I commit to this brand that I truly believed in and what we were trying to do, try to bring people together through food? And that's what we did. I made a promise. So every single bottle of our sauce has a logo or a Palmer Nichols Foundation, that we're trying to help put good into the world as we try to learn this process of building a business. And that's where I was able to meet people like Daniela with Mindful Goods. And once we committed to going in on the A+ content and really building out our image on the Amazon store, things just completely switched. Our sweet chili sauce, which was the gateway sauce that got us doing this in the first place, has been Amazon's choice for over a year now. Our Thai peanut is the second best-selling peanut sauce on Amazon behind Whole Foods brand, so we're number one. In reality, we're number one. So that was really it. It was just making that commitment, sucking up my pride, realizing that I don't know certain things and I have to find people that are better at that. And that's what we've been able to do thus far with the help of Daniela and Amazon.
Well, I am so sorry for your loss, but I have to say I'm just so inspired by how you took that and was able to translate that into such an incredible and inspiring story and build such a successful brand. Well, Daniela, I'd love to turn to you. So in your experience, you work with such a diverse set of brands. So what would be your suggestion to help brands be successful today?
Yeah, so from our perspective, what we're looking at is kind of from a different lens, right? I think the conversation is oftentimes around advertising, but if you look at these amazing stories, for us, the focus is on the creative and elevating that content and telling that story. And if we can do that really well, that does the job of conversion, so that takes the ease off of driving traffic, right? And so if we can do that extremely well, we can help brands accelerate their sales organically, and not have to rely so heavily in those early days on PPC, and they can step ladder into that. One thing that we've learned along the way is that copying your content from Shopify and uploading it to Amazon just does not work. And so what we've really focused on is how do we build a data-driven process that's gonna pull in data from as many different places as possible so that we can make sure that we are pre-validating this content before we upload it to Amazon, so we can create successful stories like this. Like, this is 2 out of 150 brands that we work with in a year, and 87% of our clients are seeing an increase in sales when they refresh their content on Amazon. So it's not isolated results. These are 2 food brands. We don't work in just food brand category. We work across many different categories, and we see this working in many different categories. And so the focus for us is elevated visual content with a data-driven process behind it.
I think that's so powerful. You know, customers today are so visual oriented, and being able to see, you know, the values of a brand and what they stand for at a glance can make such a big difference to really set your brand apart and be able to, you know, really drive sales and introduce new customers to your brand. Well, Danielle, I would love to come back to you with this one again. What do you recommend for the brands you work with when it comes to prioritizing brand building? And how has Amazon helped these brands in that journey?
Yeah, so again, for me, it's elevated content, but I'll break that down so everybody understands what that means. So in this world that we live in today, we know that brands like Apple have really trained us to expect a certain level of content when we're buying things. And that's kind of what we strive for at Mindful Goods. And so when we are doing that, we're thinking through a few different elements. The first thing is we want to make sure that every brand we work with right now on Seller Central has unlocked premium A+ content. And the reason for that is because it's much more dynamic, it's not static, it gives us much more functionality and visual engagement. We can build full-scale landing pages like the examples you saw when we walked up on stage. And ultimately, we can increase conversion. We had a brand in the last week that increased their sales by 1,008% when they uploaded their premium A+ content. So this has a huge impact on the brands that we're working with, and a big upside potential. 65% of the brands that we work with on right now today are seeing anywhere from 20 to 1,000% increase in sales overall. The second thing is building as much data into the process as possible. So we're using things like PickFu, like Data Dive, like Helium 10. We're using things like brand analytics inside of Amazon, pulling the PPC reports, understanding which keywords are converting, and trying to just get as much information, reviewing reviews of your listings, but also your competitors. Bring all of that in as you're developing your content and try to understand who is this shopper, what questions do they have, how do we make sure that all of their questions are answered, or at least the top 5 are answered in the first few seconds of hitting that page. And if we can do that really well, we're gonna improve conversion. And then the last thing is split testing. That is like the crux of everything that we do at Mindful Goods. We do it in 2 different ways. So the first thing is making sure that we're using tools like PickFu or IntelliV, and that we are split testing as much as we can. At the very least, you should be split testing your main image. We're seeing up to 160% increases in sales when we split test main images. That's something that we did for YesBar. We saw an 11.8% increase in click-through traffic just off of the main image alone. For Pretty Thai, we actually did a full refresh, and we saw almost 200% increase in sales. So this content has a huge impact if you're bringing this data into the process and you're split testing along the way. And then the last piece of it is once you've pre-validated with a tool like PickFu, then you can say, okay, we have a good indication that this is working. Let's run it on Manage Your Experiments, which is an amazing free tool. You know, we have premium A+ content, and we have Manage Your Experiments, like 2 amazing tools that Amazon has given us in the last year that every brand should be taking advantage of, and that we let Amazon basically tell us that our it validates the content for us so that we know, okay, this is what is gonna be the potential revenue impact based on this content. And what I love to see is that when brands get their manager experiments results and realize that the investment they just made in the content, they already made it back, So.
If I were to just sum that up, I think it just shows the amazing results you can have when you use the data, and you're not always going to know what's going to work, and so test it out. Don't be afraid to try it. Get the data, experiment and test, and by changing things and continuing to get better, you can have really remarkable results over time with Amazon, and really leaning into that high quality content can be transformative for a brand. Well, when I think about brand building, it's also something, it's not always linear. There's going to be some fits and starts sometimes along the way. So, I really wanted to understand, what was the biggest brand building strategy shift you executed, and what made you realize you needed that change? So, Robert, I'll come to you with this one.
Yeah, it was really easy. It was working with Mindful Goods and choosing to make that commitment, that financial commitment, and the dedication to the A+ content, and really, really putting your best foot forward on the Amazon store. If you were to Google and go back and look at our history of branding, especially the beginning when we're doing everything ourselves, it's pretty hilarious. So it's just finding people that were a lot smarter than me in certain areas. I'm a chef. I'm in the business 95%. So I didn't know marketing, and I didn't know design. And I found somebody that I could trust, and they said, hey, I think you need to talk to Mindful Goods. And in the food business, I follow the people, so I follow companies like Momofuku. And then when I saw that they worked with Momofuku, I said, okay, if they're good enough for Momofuku, they're good enough for Pretty Thai. And that was really the initial. And then I found a brand management team on Amazon, and we just put these two things together. And like Daniela said, when we first went with the A+ content, 200% increase. And then when I combined it with the brand management team, in April of last year, we immediately started seeing 20% month-over-month growth. We saw 83% growth in the first 6 months. And over the last 12 months, we've doubled our revenue on Amazon. So the potential is limitless with Amazon. I think we all know that Amazon is the behemoth that controls everything, but they, as you can see from this conference, they just really care. And it's amazing when they actually let you in and want to help. And so for me, that was the biggest need.
Yeah, I think it just reinforces the value of great people. On my team, we have a tenet that we operate by of, we win with people. And so, finding the right people that you can hire into your company, the right partners that you can work with to trust, can be so powerful, and kind of bring in that expertise on a lot of these things where there's really, some amazing people that are just so deep on the knowledge on these areas if you want to transform your brand. Well, what are the keys for brands to be able to stay connected with their customers? Daniela, would love to bring that one to you.
This is such a good one, and they actually chatted about it this morning in the opening ceremony, so if you guys were there, we all know how much social media has had an impact on our day-to-day lives, and I feel like it's such a great avenue for brands to stay connected on a day-to-day basis. But I have a great story about this, because coming into the conference, so I live in South America, and I don't get to do my Amazon shopping every day like most of you. So I showed up and I had 50 packages waiting for me at the hotel from Amazon. And I came to realize like half of the things that I bought were recommendations from TikTok. So I'm still getting my recommendations from TikTok now, which I never did before, and I now am. And then I'm coming to Amazon and I'm buying my products. So as a brand owner, you now have this ability to be in people's feed so much easier than ever before, and make these recommendations to get people to shop for your product. And I have my eye on that to understand how that's going to impact buying behavior, how we can stay connected with people in this process. And so from my perspective, in terms of the creatives, what I want to make sure is that when people are shopping for these brands and they get the recommendation on TikTok and they make it to Amazon at some point, we have to make sure we're telling the same story, that it's not disjointed, that the creatives are seamless, that it feels like the same brand. They should be able to go to your website or to TikTok or to Instagram or to Amazon, and it should feel the same. And if it doesn't, you're gonna lose the sale. And so for us, that becomes the critical piece, is making sure that that's being done. And then second to that is really thinking about, at that very first touch point, like, how is that relationship of connecting with that customer, right? So when you're on social, how are you doing that? One of the most interesting stories that I've seen in the last few months is we worked with a brand called Ancestral Supplements. I went to the reviews on their listing, like I do, to do an audit. And I'm looking at the reviews, and I have never seen so many customers going, maybe in the case of you guys are an exception as well, but I was so impressed to see people saying things like, the founder responded to me on social media, they answered my question, I had to come here and leave a review because I feel like this brand is listening to me and they're helping me, and they're basically, people feel like they're being gifted with something before they even buy the product, and it's just a conversation. It's just, the brand is listening and they're paying attention and they're addressing the comments in social media, and then people are so happy to have that kind of a relationship with brands that we don't often get today. It's far from transactional what they're doing. So if we can remember to be more like that, I think it sets a great example for how all brands can build these relationships with their customers over time.
I love it. And this is something that I think increasingly brands that are successful are using all of the tools at their disposal. So I was pretty excited to see this morning the partnership between Buy with Prime and TikTok, for example. And we really want to help brands succeed wherever your customers happen to be. And if you're using social media, if you're not aware of this, if you link traffic back into Amazon or other sites besides that as well, you can use a brand referral bonus as well to earn an average of a 10% bonus back on those sales that come into Amazon as well. So it can really be a way that you use all of the channels available as you think about how to build a brand, and Amazon's helping to reward you and help make sure that we're kind of sharing the benefit in that as well. Well, Abigail, would love to understand, what's your customer acquisition strategy, and how do you make sure you acquire the right customers?
Okay, I'm just taking in that new thing you shared. I'm like, you guys are just full of gifts all the time. All right, so I'm going to answer this in two parts, which is I'm going to answer it emotionally, and then I'll answer it practically. Everything for us starts with our heart, truly. And so, for us, I think when we think about branding, it's always about drilling down into who we are. And I think for all of you who have brands, it's really about answering that with your heart first, right? So for us, our first customer was family. It was my kid. And we still view our customers that way. Like, everybody's eating the same bar I made for him, okay? We didn't change that, even though as we grew, there were plenty of people who told us to do that, and we refused. And so we still feed you guys like you're at our table. And so that's a big thing, and I think a lot of people call it branding, but it really just means being you. Just be yourself, be who you are, let people know who you are. That's how they find you. And so a lot of our customers, they come to us, maybe, they're celiac, maybe they've got weight issues they're trying to manage through food. They have busy families, they're going through menopause, maybe they're diabetic or gestational diabetes often, allergies, they write to us, and we understand, I know very personally how lonely that journey can be. You eat so many times a day. And when you can never eat what other people are eating, it actually affects you emotionally. And so what we wanted to do is to take that away from people, to take that weight away, and to take away that loneliness and replace it with this little pocket of joy that you take out of your pantry and can pop in your purse and take with you when you drive, and just have this little pocket of joy so you're always cared for. And that's what we do. That's why we call it the yes bar. It's you can say yes. And our whole thing is taking your limitations and making them feel limitless, right? Helping customers crush their goals and not their spirits. And so that's who we are. And that's how we do that, right? So then how do you do it on a practical level? Okay, so there's seller campaigns. Well, first of all, Danielle. Genuinely, I think it's no joke that we both work with Danielle and then also with Amplify. And it's so funny because we were talking about that yesterday. But like, there's just so many. There are people who know what they're doing, and Amazon knows what they're doing, and you want to use that, and then find other people who know how to do all this, right? So seller campaigns, auto campaigns for keyword search, retargeting customers, robust branded search terms. Our acquisition costs and conversions, I told you, are better here. And then I guess just to round out this answer, when we think about acquiring a customer, we think of it as like a wheel of acquisition. So the first part is getting people to the page, right? And that's like part one of it. And that's the A+ story and the photos that let people taste it and find our values and know who we are. And then also the reviews build the trust. And so then you're like acquiring the customer. But at that point, you're not done. You have to actually deliver what you promised and deliver an excellent product in an excellent way, delivered on time, properly. So that's where Amazon takes care of all of that. The FBA, all of that's amazing. Solved so many headaches from when we first started and we were doing all that ourselves. And then, between our cooking and Amazon's operational, I think, and then the reviews, right? So we deliver between those two things. And then the reviews keep that wheel going, because now you get customers who've gone through that process who are saying what a great process it was, and that allows other people to trust. And that's that wheel of acquisition is what I would say.
I think it's incredibly powerful, and I think what inspires me is, just starting with such an authentic story and mission of how you're helping your customers and inventing that into your product, and that authenticity that you really, live and breathe with your brand every day. And then, so glad that you're able to also use these tools to translate that into success and build your tribe of the right customers that are really going to advocate for your brand. Well, Daniela, how do you think about brands and how can they build customer loyalty? And also, how important is this for an overall brand building strategy?
Well, it's huge, right? I mean, we all know it's so much easier to keep a customer coming back and buying your product than it is to keep finding new customers all the time. So best case scenario, we just need to be focused on that and be very good at it. And one of the number one ways, like you said, is making sure that we are maintaining quality, that we have differentiation, like you were saying, Robert. So it's like, I feel like you guys did a really great job of focusing on that early on. You quite honestly made my job a lot easier. At the time that we worked with both of your brands, we didn't have things like premium A+ content. And so when I hear your story, I fall in love with both of your products. I fall in love with your brand. I'm the type of person that I fall for a good story. I'm like, oh, I love their story. I'm gonna buy this. I'm gonna support it. And if I love the product, I'm gonna keep buying it. I'm hooked, right? And so that was something that I knew when I heard the story. It was a great story. We need to figure out a way to tell it visually. And at the time, I had seen a video that Abigail had done where she was interviewed by a news outlet. And I remember I watched it, and it was long. It was like 40 minutes. I watched the whole thing, and I almost started crying. And I was thinking, we have to figure out how to get this video on the page. I think at that time, video wasn't even available in the bottom of the carousel of the product images. So I was like, we have to figure out how to get this video in front of customers. And at the time, the only way I could think of how to do that was to cut it up in little pieces and put it up in the video shorts as a series so that it would like kick everybody else off of that section, and it would just be your face in that section. And I knew that if people just watched one piece of it, one piece of one of the videos, they were going to be hooked. They were gonna fall in love with you, fall in love with the story, and that's exactly what happened. So really just having a great product, differentiation, and then once we do that, once we have the customer hooked, how do we make sure that the customer feels seen and heard, like the example of Ancestral Supplements, right? Like how do we keep them coming back for more? And another gift that Amazon has given us recently is the brand tailored promotions, right? We're able to let the customer know that, hey, I saw that you were in our cart and you left. I saw that you've bought our product a few times now, and you can tailor these messages and keep them coming back for more because they're gonna feel seen and they're gonna feel heard. And so that's the role that we have to play, but to figure out who these customers are, who are these top percentage of customers that are buying more, how do we get the ones that are not to buy more, and how do we keep that coming?
I think it's so powerful, and especially especially if you're a new brand starting out, video production could be quite expensive, but it really helps with the authenticity and being able to communicate, what your values are in a very, very quick way. And then there's lots of different places across the site that you can use video content, from ads to the media block to A+, your brand stores, et cetera, and obviously on social media as well. And then, obviously rewarding your customers and making sure that they feel special and coming back to your brand is just so powerful to make sure that you, build the right relationships that are gonna last. Well, I think we've got one last question for me, and then we'll go to the audience. But what strategies did your team employ to drive brand loyalty, Abigail?
So quality, right? Value, customer service, obviously, like those are definitely up there. I will also just say it on the note of it does cost a lot to get video. We've never paid for video because there are places that need a good story. And so if you have a good story, there are places that will do that. And so you have to find the right people. And I think, again, like we're talking about here, a lot of it is like understanding what Amazon brings to us, understanding all of that. So like from an Amazon perspective, you've got the multi-pack with the 10% subscribe and save, right, for loyal people. And that's incredible. Like that builds so much loyalty. If you guys are not using subscribe and save, I remember we had a conversation years ago when it first started, and we were like, I really think we should be doing this. And we were like, well, wait, we thought about it, and then we did it, and it was like, I can't believe we even thought about that. And then of course the tailored, the brand tailored promotions on abandoned and customer segmentation. Our results were so successful that after 1 week, we doubled our budget, okay? So having a direct line to the customer, being really responsive, building trust. You were talking about that with Ancestral, but it's like, we really do. I mean, there's just 3 of us on our team, and there's always been, it's like, we answer all of the questions. We're real people, and Amazon allows us to be able to talk to all the people buying our bars. It's amazing. And so I guess, we look at it, that's important. We want to celebrate our growth. We never want to rest on our laurels. So we are about to refresh our A+ content for the 3rd time in 4 years. We are also about to come out with new packaging. It's going to be a very big year for us. There's a lot of things that are changing in our world and growing in very exciting ways. And so, we're going to be debuting all that on Amazon. That's where we choose to do our business. Amazon is our main hub. And as we grow, some of that changes, but it's still, this is our place where we have speed to shelf communication, which is just so important. So I think that answers that question. Yeah.
I think it's great. And it just shows how, building a brand isn't always linear, and, you're going to need to keep listening to customers and iterating and sometimes think about your positioning and think about how to continue to reinvent yourself to connect with the next wave of customers and stay authentic to your roots as you continue to kind of find your growth and find your niche for where your brand is going to stand out.